organize myself. Y'all good? The state of Texas has executed John William King. He was pronounced dead at 7:08 p.m. this evening. When asked if he had a final statement, Mr. King simply responded with the word no. He did, however, provide a written statement that reads as follows: capital punishment. Them without the capital get the punishment, period. Any questions?
Were there any family members who were witnesses?
There were 2 witnesses from the Byrd family, 2 sisters and a niece. They will be making a statement in a few moments. They'll come join me and we'll have some words for you.
Did King make eye contact with the Byrd family?
King did not open his eyes at any point during the process when witnesses were in the room. When the witnesses entered the witness room, Mr. King was already on the gurney. He had his eyes closed and made very little, if any, movements. When asked, again, he was asked by the warden if he had a final statement. That was at 6:56 this evening. He responded simply with the words no, did not open his eyes at any point during the process, took 1 deep breath, 1 exhale, and that was the extent of it.
Explain the delay in the execution.
Say again?
Explain the delay in the execution.
There needed to be a ruling by the U.S. Supreme Court.
How long was it between the injection and the
So at 6:56 this evening, the order was given by the director of the Correctional Institutions Division for the warden to proceed. He then immediately asked Mr. King if he had a final statement, which responded no, and immediately thereafter the process began. That was at 6:56 this evening, and he was pronounced dead at 7:08. That's fairly standard. In this case, there was no sign of movement of the offender at any point in the process, before, during, or after, other than that single deep breath and exhale.
Jeremy, in the list of all the activity that took place in the last 24 hours, I saw that there were some visitors. Were you all able to figure out who those visitors were?
There were a couple of his friends who were on his general visitation list. That's about a dozen people total. I don't know their identities at this point.
You say you got to talk to him earlier today?
We did. We talked to him briefly this afternoon.
His emotions?
At the time, his demeanor was calm. He was fairly stoic. We talked almost exclusively about procedural things, about what might take place this afternoon, evening, and what would take place through the afternoon. And that was basically the extent of it. There wasn't a significant amount of conversation.
Did he ever express remorse?
He didn't express anything other than the word no when asked if he had a statement.
I know his eyes were closed. Was there any tears or anything?
Not that I saw. Not that I saw. Literally, it was as if he was with his eyes closed, as if he was sleeping, except he did respond to the question with the word no, but did not open his eyes.
So the last words were capital punishment. Men without capital get the punishment.
So, again, those were not words. That was a written statement. Part of what was going on this afternoon is he was provided with the opportunity, if he chose, to write a statement, and he simply wrote those words. And nothing else other than signing the document.
What's his men without?
Them, colon, capital punishment, colon, them without the capital get the punishment, period. So if you'll excuse me for a second. Folks, the Members of the Byrd family who were witnesses to the execution have a statement they'd like to deliver.
Good evening. My name is Clara Byrd Taylor. I'm the older sister of James Byrd. This is my sister LaVon Harris. She's the younger sister of James Byrd. And this is my daughter, Tiffany Holmes, who's a niece. We want to read a brief statement from the family. Today, we witnessed the peaceful and dignified execution of John King for the savage, brutal, and inhumane murder of James on June 7, 1998. Really a modern-day lynching. King, who was the ringleader of the three, had a deeply ingrained hatred of blacks, as evidenced by his actions, his tattoos, and hate-filled rhetoric. He wanted to make a name for himself and his organization by killing a black man. James was chosen as his target. James was shown no mercy as he was dragged, while still alive, behind a pickup truck using a 25-foot logging chain. His body was slung from side to side like a sack of potatoes until he was decapitated. King showed no remorse then and showed no remorse tonight. His execution tonight was just punishment for his actions. The outcry of support from around the world indicated that James' death made a difference, not just to us, but to people around the world. We are very grateful to the judicial system for their full support. The local, state, and federal government all worked together to get a speedy arrest, trial, and conviction of all three perpetrators. Tonight, after almost 21 years on death row, the death sentence was finally carried out. James would have been 70 this year. He was deprived of the priceless memory of watching his three children grow up to be productive citizens. He has 4 grandchildren, and his older granddaughters will soon finish college. James' legacy continues to be one of peace and nonviolence. As a result of his death, laws have been changed to recognize hate crimes and to punish accordingly. But laws cannot change the heart of man. We look to God to bring about a permanent solution. But meanwhile, we encourage everyone to reach out to those of another ethnic group and get to know them on a personal level. Because when we have open dialogue, it helps to overcome racial prejudice. If we don't overcome racial prejudice, it leads to racial hatred and acts of violence, which is why we're here tonight. That's it. Questions?
He never looked at you. He never looked at any of the witnesses. Is that disappointing to you, or how disappointing is that?
I think to the very end, he showed his attitude towards James and the family. He didn't look at us. He showed no sign of remorse. He just laid there with his eyes closed the entire time. It's all like an act of defiance.
Why did you feel the need to forgive?
Forgiveness is a word that's used differently by some people. When we say forgive, we're thinking about letting go of resentment that paralyzes you. But as far as accepting what he's done, no, we have not done that. But we don't spend each and every one day of our life hating and filled with bitterness. We choose to move on in a positive way. That makes sense.
Do you remember when he was convicted and he walked out and he was given the chance to say something to y'all and he said an atrocious statement, an
Right.
offensive statement. Your thoughts on that and to the very end right now where he seemed to, with his eyes closed the entire time,
Ignored us.
like he was asleep, and then when given the chance, nothing at all. From that moment to this time that you've seen that he has not in any way tried to reach out to you, what are your thoughts?
None whatsoever. No remorse was shown then. It's indicative of how embedded his hate was and how proud he was of what he had done. No remorse whatsoever.
How did it feel for you that at no point, and he looked like he was asleep the entire time compared to what your brother went through?
That's difficult to answer because I don't want to go down the road of James' brutal death because that brings back too many painful memories. But it was very, very savage. I prefer not to reflect on that right now. But compared to the way James died, his death was very peaceful and dignified.
Claire, does this give you closure tonight? Where do you move on from here?
Closure is a word that's difficult to define for many people. It's like a wound that you've had that's healed, but the scar always remains. So the scar of James' death will always be on us, but it's not paralyzing us. We're moving forward with our activities and the things that the foundation is doing to bring about better conditions.
How did you feel sitting in that room and then knowing he was pronounced dead? Did you get a sense of relief?
Can I be honest? I felt nothing. There was no sense of relief, no sense. I was just happy that this month was over with, and that part of this, what word to use to call it, this challenge was over. Now we can move on to the next stage.
What message would you directly have for the community of Jasper tonight that had to endure so much?
I think if you continue to embrace diversity, no matter where you are, it's going to help solve the problem. But it needs to start in the elementary school kids. That is, setting up programs and resources to help people to deal with their prejudices towards others of a different race, and not creating a climate or environment in which hate is allowed to flourish.
He said nothing to you, and what would you have said to him?
I don't think you want to hear that, so I don't think I want to comment on that one. No.
Clara, how did it feel to walk in and see him there?
I looked at him laying there peacefully, as if he was already asleep, as if he was just, during the trial, he showed no interest in the trial. He seemed to have shown no interest in him being strapped to a gurney and dying. He said, he was kind of bored in the trial, just disinterested. Same attitude tonight to me.
And just face this?
Justice? Yes. Yes.
His written statement there, when he seems to allege like he was killed because of no lack, basically a poor man dies, it's capital punishment, capital punishment to those without capital to that sense. How does that make you feel when you consider you aren't a rich family, James Byrd wasn't a rich man, and then him using that as a crutch for the thing?
I'm not sure I understand the question, Angel. I'm sorry.
Basically, just from his final statement saying, which was a bit confusing, saying that it was capital punishment. Jeremy, was it capital punishment?
I didn't know he made a final statement. We hadn't heard that, so I can't comment on it.
A written statement.
I haven't seen it, haven't heard it. Sorry, can't comment on that. Had no idea at all. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you. Janice? All right, guys, anything else? Procedurally, what occurs at this point is the custody of his remains will go with a unnamed funeral home. There is a person that is one of his friends that is on his visitation list who has been, he gave the permission to claim his remains, and they'll have 30 days to do that. If that doesn't happen, then he would be buried in the cemetery.
Have they said where they buried him?
You'd have to ask them. Anything else? Okay. Thanks, guys. The procedurally, the building here will be open for you until close to 10 if you need it. But other than that, we won't have any further comments unless you ask right now. No. But I can't. I'll try to get that.
Can we get a copy of her statement?
Sorry.